Here we have a couple of razors by Carl Friedrich Earn. They arrived here by the magic of eBay. And I'm going to do a little bit of an assessment and let you watch that. And then we're going to hone one of these two razors. Now, as is typical with razors coming off of eBay, the pivot pin was completely loose in both razors. So the first order of business was to tighten the pivot pin by peening it. Here I have a ball peen hammer, well, both a ball peen and flat, but you use the ball peen end of the hammer. And in this case, any hard, dense metal surface as a backing will do. But I have a small jeweler's anvil here that I use that happens to be convenient, but certainly not necessary. So I tighten the pin on both razors. Next up is a geometry assessment. I lay the razors on a flat surface, in this case a metal plate, and take a look at how flat the edge rests against the plate. On this razor, there's a slight, it comes off the plate at the toe, and everything else looks good when I lay it on this side. When I put the razor flat, oops, I gotta get it off the shoulder. When I put the razor flat on the plate this way, the very edge lies pretty much against the plate the whole way. It comes up a tiny bit at the heel and is pretty good at the toe. Here's the other razor. It's pretty flat, very good on this side. And on this side, it comes up just a slight amount right at the toe, but I don't think that's significant. It looks more exaggerated in the camera view than in real life. So I think we're gonna sharpen this razor today, and today we'll talk about the basics of my approach to sharpening razors. We're going to put a new, as you can see from the edge needs to be started from scratch here. You can see divots in the edge. So we'll be starting and establishing a new bevel and moving all the way through to a finish. And I'm going to do this on synthetic stones. And while I'm doing it, I'll be talking you through my approach to razor sharpening. And this talk will be targeted at those people who have not done a lot of razor honing, or are just starting out, or maybe are thinking of just starting out. So I'll see you over the stones with this razor. Okay, so we're back at the stones. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is that the method that I use to sharpen knives and razors is actually a method that was taught to me by my good friend Jimmy, who owned, he's retired now, who owned a very high volume sharpening business that sharpened pretty much everything. Everything, including lawnmower blades and scissors and professional hair clippers and so on. So he taught me pretty much everything I know about how to approach sharpening as a professional. And his method was, or what he taught me, was to do an assessment of each item that you're going to sharpen, and you just saw me do a very simple assessment of this razor, and then tailor what you do to the razor based upon your assessment. So sharpen the razor or the knife or whatever based upon what it actually needs. Now, this assumes that you know in general what you're trying to accomplish. And I will say that both Jimmy and I consider this method, this approach, to be the right way to approach sharpening. There are other ways, the counting methods and so on. But this method, as I said before, this method tailors what you're going to do to the item that you're going to do it to. Okay, so with a razor, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I've said in the honing principles video, I went over this, but what you're trying to accomplish is to use the stone. So if this line is the stone, and the stone is going to have abrasives on the surface, right? It's even though we flatten the stone, the overall shape is flat, but the actual shape has texture to it, and that texture is defined by the abrasive. And then what you're trying to do is to use that abrasive to remove material on both sides of the razor until the apex, which is drawn here, gets down to gets small and as small as the abrasive will allow. And so what this means is that with a coarse stone like this 2K, with a coarse stone, the dimension of this apex is going to be larger than it would be with something like this 8K stone. So the goal is based upon what you need to do. In this case, we want to create a whole new bevel. So we're going to go to a coarse stone like this 2K, and we're going to establish this geometry using the 2K to drive the apex as small as it can go. Now, how do we know? How do we know that we need to start here, and how do we know when we're done on this stone? And hold on, and I'll be right back. Okay, I wanted to get a fresh one of these. This is a polystyrene packing peanut, and I use this to test for sharpness. Other methods are to cut hair, or to use a cherry tomato. There's also, you can use the thumbnail test, where you put the edge on your thumbnail and drag a little bit and determine its sharpness based on how sticky or unsticky it feels. At the moment, I think that the polystyrene is by far the best method to check sharpness, because A, you won't want to eat this, unlike a cherry tomato, and then B, this is very sensitive when used consistently. The polystyrene skin is very sensitive to pressure. So how do you use this? There's a particular way that I suggest using this, and that is to only push cut, and to push cut by bringing the edge to the polystyrene and then pushing in. And so here I'm pushing pretty hard and I'm not breaking the surface. And you also check the entire edge. So I did just break the surface with the heel, but I also kind of accelerated into it. But come up to it and then press, come up to it and then press, and so on. And the reason for doing it this way is, again, consistency. After a very short period of time, you're going to find what amount of pressure relates to a dull edge, and then what amount of pressure relates to a edge as it becomes successively sharper with each stone. So this edge is uneven. This edge is kind of sharp in some places and very dull in other places. And I'm determining that by using the method that I showed you. Bring it up and then press. Never, a slice cut is a far more efficient way of cutting than a push cut. So if you use the method that I just showed you, then you can consistently evaluate sharpness as you go from stone to stone. Now, this level of sharpness kind of suggests that for some areas of this edge, I could maybe go to a 4K stone, but it really doesn't matter. The difference between a 4K stone and this stone is just the size of abrasive, and I'm trying to just remove material. Remember, I'm trying to remove material. So I can spend less time on this stone and do the same work as I did spending more time on like a 4K stone. So if I get the basic shape that I want on this stone, then I can continue to refine, to narrow this apex on successively finer stones. Now, before we go on, and again, this talk is targeted towards people who are really new to sharpening. The first thing you need to know, so we've talked quite a bit about what you're trying to do, how you're trying to shape the bevel, the edge. An edge is two bevels and an apex. So you're trying to create an edge using abrasion. And so the next thing that you need to know is, well, how do these stones work? Well, synthetic stones and natural stones all have the same principle, and that is this piece of sandpaper. They work the same way in principle. Sandpaper has abrasive. In this case, it's this might be, well, let's just say this is the same abrasive. Most sandpaper uses an aluminum oxide abrasive, which is what's in here. So you have an abrasive and you have an adhesive that holds that abrasive fixed against the paper. Here you have an adhesive, again, aluminum oxide, and it's held in place by a binder. The difference between these two is very, very subtle, but kind of wonderful in the case of a water stone. In the case of a piece of sandpaper, as you use the sandpaper, you tend to round over the abrasive and eventually break it away from the paper. The adhesive that holds it gives way. In the case of the water stone, that process is by design. As you move across the water stone, the surface abrasive breaks free, but this is a brick that is made of binder and abrasive, and that mix is consistent from the very bottom all the way to the very top of the brick. So as you grind away abrasive at the surface, you reveal new, fresh abrasive that is underneath. So that's a real feature of water stones. But in the end, a water stone operates the same way as a piece of sandpaper. So what about slurry? Well, in an effort to not go too long, I'm not going to talk too much about slurry at the moment. Slurry adds a third level of abrasion to the system. Slurry is less efficient than a fixed abrasive, right? If this abrasive moved, then you can see that some of the energy that I would put into sharpening is also being put into moving the abrasive, whereas in a piece of sandpaper or here, excuse me, the energy goes into having the abrasive remove material and not move the abrasive across the surface. So there are other aspects to slurry. The simple one to remember is that if you have slurry, it is going to add to the limitation of keenness on this apex. And before I go any further, I should explain what keenness is. So keenness, let me get another display device. So keenness is, if I come down here and I create an apex, and note that I always give an apex dimension because they always have dimension. But, so here's the very, very end. This is the very, very apex of an edge. These are the two bevels. And so what's keenness? Well, if I measure back 3 microns from this apex, if I measure back 3 microns, and then I measure this width at 3 microns, then the measurement of that width is the edge's keenness. And the keener an edge is, the better it sharpens. And again, that's determined by the size of the abrasive. But also the keener it is, the less material there is, and therefore there's less material structure to withstand the forces of, in this case, shaving. So for now, that's pretty much all you need to know about an edge. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to prepare this stone. I'm going to flatten it because it needs flattening, and I'm going to wet it, flatten it, and then we'll get going. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll. This is the 2K, and again, I chose to start at 2K because this edge has some actual decent spots, but also some very dull spots, and I think it would be worthwhile to go to a coarser grit to establish 2 bevels more quickly than I could with a 4K stone. And the way in which I'm going to start, and then I'm going to use the packing peanut to test repeatedly until I think the edge is sharp enough off of the stone to move on. So let's start. In terms of technique, I'm going to suggest that if you're starting, only use 3 strokes. Use the half stroke, like I'm doing here, and you're welcome to use whatever method. Because I'm a knife sharpener, I have a tendency to put both hands on the blade all the time. But I've done a lot of knife sharpening, and it's just my habit. You are welcome to use one hand, but if you do use one hand, you want to make sure you have a method that allows you to apply even pressure from the heel to the toe. And my method of doing that, you're going to have to torque, and you don't want to torque a lot, but you want to torque into the stone, and then you want to have even pressure from the heel to the toe. If you do that with one hand, you can do what Lynn Abrams did, which is to pinch the tang, kind of put your elbow up, and use that to press down on the whole blade. Try to apply pressure to the whole blade. As you can see, you can tell from the way the swarf is moving that I'm managing to do that. It's just uncomfortable for me. So you'll see me do this, but you pick whatever way you feel most comfortable in using. Another thing is how you turn the blade. I turn the blade like a knife sharpener turns the blade. Razor honing people will turn it on the spine so that you don't catch the edge. However you do it, don't catch the edge. So here I'm doing half strokes. The importance of half strokes is to make sure you are abrading from the heel to the toe. If you watch a lot of honing videos, you're going to see this. You're going to see the heel off of the stone quite a bit of time, and that's as time goes on, that's going to create problems. So this is the first of the strokes that I suggest, which is half strokes. Try to fit the whole edge on the stone if you can. If you can't, you can work it in sections. Now, after you've done half strokes, the second stroke that I would suggest is the alternating stroke. Again, keeping the whole blade, or working the whole blade, making sure you work the whole blade on the stone. And so this is already looking pretty good. And how about pressure? Well, the more pressure you use, the more abrasion you get. Again, going back to the sandpaper model, the harder you press against this abrasive, the more that abrasive wants to tear out material. Now, in the case of a razor, the downside of that is the harder you press, the more likely you are to over torque the razor and turn the edge into the abrasive and degrade the edge. So I always recommend just enough pressure to know that you're tight against the surface, and then let the abrasive do the work. Now here I think the abrasive has done its work. I'm going to use the third stroke, which is in razor sharpening, this is called the X stroke. But for me, and the X stroke is really designed for sharpening on a stone that is smaller than the razor. So a typical X stroke would start and the stone might end here, and as you go down, the heel starts to come off, but the toe comes on, and you get coverage of the whole edge. But what I'm using an X stroke here for is to remove, and I have lightened up pressure a little bit, but I'm using this to remove any burr that will have formed. Or remove enough burr. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is test. Have we created, and the goal is to create our geometry on this stone. From here on, we want to refine. So let's test. So we do not have good, we never had, yeah, that's about where it was there. It's gotten worse there. And so we're going to do a little more on the 2K. And I'm going to do this with alternating strokes. And the other thing we're going to do is to watch the slurry and how it flows over the edge. Okay, let's go take a look. Now we haven't started using any kind of microscope yet. We will. Okay, so that's definitely getting sharper towards the toe. That's feeling pretty good towards the toe. But we need a little work towards the heel. Hang on, I'm going to pause you and come back. Okay, I wanted to get my little diamond plate so I could raise a little bit of a slurry. Again, the purpose of this slurry is to add a little bit of abrasion to the system, but primarily to sort of bead blast this apex to help prevent burr from forming. Now I'm starting to, in my case, I'm using a little bit of pressure on my left hand to get asymmetrical abrasion at the edge, because the toe, from the center to the toe, is fairly sharp, and then from the center to the heel is duller. And so I'm I'm putting a little bit of pressure, and I mean a little bit, to emphasize pressure here while also having pressure towards the toe. And again, pressure and abrasion are related. So I'm getting asymmetrical abrasion because I'm getting a little bit more pressure here than at the toe. And okay, let's see where we are. And so this is for those who are beginning. This is the testing is what tells you how you're progressing. Okay, so now I'm there, right? So you can see that I'm cutting in, and I'm doing the method, right? I'm bringing it to the packing peanut and then pressing. And yes, I have. This is the 2K stone, so I need to apply a little bit of pressure. I don't expect it to be. I don't expect it to be at the finish level yet, because the abrasive particles in this stone are large, right? They're about 7.5 microns, 7.35, if you really believe that. They're large compared to what we're going to finish on, which will be in the 1 to 2 micron range. So these abrasive particles are about 7.5 times the size of the abrasive particles that we're going to finish this razor on. So we don't expect this apex to be that sharp, and we're not going to force it. There's no advantage to trying to get this to be the same sort of apex that you can get off of a finish stone, because you won't be able to do it. What we're trying to do here is get this to be an even amount of pressure. Now I'm applying a little bit more pressure there, but that's not the end of the world. Okay, so I'm going to call that, I have almost the same amount of pressure at the heel, in the center of the razor, in this area of the razor, and at the toe. So that's all I need from this stone. I can do more, and it will probably improve a little bit, but at this point I have enough sharpness. And again, I've learned this is where the experience part comes in, right? I would suggest using the stone until you can have some pressure to break the skin of the packing peanut, and then you're good enough. The key thing is that you're evenly sharp from heel to toe. All right, let's move this aside. And we're going to bring up the 4K. We're going to do this. And now I have that shape established. And all I'm going to do is at the same angle, because at the same angle you'll need to see the honing principles video, but this angle will remain the same. What's going to happen is that I'm going to narrow the apex. So it will effectively draw out. It will look as if I've drawn out these lines to narrow this apex. But let me. I just got back from traveling, and I took these stones with me, and so they're going to need a flattening before I use them. All right, I'm going to pause you while I flatten this. Okay, it's flat, as you can see. The pencil marks are removed. Let's raise a little bit of a slurry. Because as I said, just to start, until you really know how to control slurry, just raise a little bit of slurry on every stone until you get to the end. Okay. And again, back to half strokes. And you don't need to count, but you do want to do roughly the same amount of work on each side. How do I know that I've done the same amount of work? Again, I don't count, but I do observe. And so I watch how the slurry moves. And that tells me if it moves the same way on each side, then that apex is pretty much directly under the spine. And if it moves the same way at the heel and at the toe and at the center, then I know that sharpness is probably the same at all of those points. Same pressure I was using on the last stone, just enough to keep the edge solidly against the surface. Now that I see that we're moving the slurry very well. Lightened up pressure just a tad, just to see how well that edge on its own is staying against the stone, and it's staying very well on its own against the stone. Little cleaning strokes. Okay. I say cleaning, the proper term is deburring. Okay. Okay, yep, definitely sharper. Definitely sharper. And I'd say pretty evenly, yes, pretty evenly sharp now from head to toe. Less pressure, again, using the same technique, push cutting, bringing the edge and then pushing, bringing the edge to the packing peanut and then pushing. Less pressure than off of the 2K. I can push this if I want to, but I'm not going to. That's an improvement, and that's what I'm trying to get off of this stone. So I'm going to move to the 8K. I'm going to show you how to properly, you will need, in addition to stones, when you're starting out, you need a way to flatten them. You can use, you can tape sandpaper down to a flat surface, or you can get an inexpensive, this is a very expensive flattening plate, but there are less expensive flattening plates, diamond plates out there. All right, so the right way to flatten a stone is to draw some lines on it, and then take your flattening plate and trying to use even pressure across the whole stone and a variety of different movements. You want to remove all those pencil marks, and where they're not removed, then that's a dip in the stone that will come out as you flatten the surrounding areas. Okay, normally you'll round the edges a little bit. good idea for your flattening plate to get a little brush. And yeah, here's a brush. And to brush your diamond plate. Brush abrasive out of your diamond plate. That really helps to extend the life of the diamond plate. Okay. So we're at 8K. We're going to raise a slurry. Now, I have not talked at all about scratch pattern. And the reason I haven't shown you scratch pattern on each of these stones is really because I know I'm talking a lot and I already know that I'm taking a lot of time with this video. However, scratch pattern is actually very important, and I have a ridiculously strong microscope, and you do not need that. You need a loupe or a magnifying glass that will give you something on the order of 25 to 50 times magnification. And when you look at the edge, when you look at the scratch pattern, time to pull out the drawing board. When you look at the scratch pattern on the side of an edge, what you want to see, so if this is the edge and this is the top of the bevel, then your scratch pattern wants to be even from the bevel all the way to the edge. This wants to be even. The scratch pattern itself wants to be even, and the appearance of the texture wants to be even all the way from the top of the bevel to the edge. The reason that you want the appearance of the texture to be even is that the way light reflects helps you to determine if this edge is straight or if this edge is coming up and down, what would be in and out of the stone here. If it's moving down or up, the reflection will change. So you want this to look very, very consistent and all the way across, and you want it to extend from the top of the bevel and look the same from the top of the bevel to the edge. If you don't see that condition, if you don't see that the scratch pattern extends all the way to the edge and looks the same at the edge, then there's portions of the edge you're not reaching, which means you need to stay on the stone that you're using until you do see this condition. All right, back with the 8K. I'm sniffling here, so I'm gonna pause you and take care of that. Okay, so we have a little slurry on this that we raised. I'll just raise a little more just to show you. So we have, this is the 8K. We have not gone on any stone without a little bit of slurry, and yet we are progressing in sharpness. After this stone, I will take a microscope image and let you know what the assessment of the entire edge on both sides was. But ideally, you're going to do that with a loupe off of each stone. So the conditions to move on for you are going to be sharpness, and even scratch pattern along the entire edge. Again, I'm sticking to the same 3 types of strokes. And it's being consistent about heel and toe on the stone. You could do it this way. Okay, doing some cleaning. All right, let's test. Hang on, allergy's acting up. Okay. All right, where is my packing peanut? There it is. All right, so let's see if we're improving. Yes, we are. Yes, as you can see now, it's taking almost no effort to move this into the packing peanut. Almost no effort. And so that's where we want to be, coming off of the 8K stone. We've gone from, and again, I'm using the same method, being very consistent so that my results off of each stone are consistent. So we're ready to move off of this stone. I'm now going to take a microscope image so that you can get an assessment of what this edge looks like. Okay, I showed you 3 microscope images of the heel and center and toe of one side of the razor. Both sides of the razor look identical in terms of scratch pattern and evenness of the edge. And so that it's sharp, and so it's time to move on. One thing I will say about looking at the scratch pattern, if it's under a microscope or under a loop, if this is your optical device, you want the optical axis to be orthogonal. You want it to be looking straight down. If I took the edge of the razor and if that edge came out of the stone towards the lens of the camera here, that edge was like this, and you want that optical axis to be looking straight down on it, ideally not at an angle. This is really hard to do with a loop. So with a loop, as you learn to use it, at least try to find a way to hold an angle that's consistent as you move up and down the edge, because that affects the way light reflects off of this edge. All right, this is the Nano 12K and nice soft 12K stone. I'm going to flatten it. Now you'll notice I have done no killing of the edge. In knife sharpening, we call that jointing. Sometimes I hear the word jointing for razor sharpening too, but I've done no killing of the edge, and as you can see from the photographs, that edge looked really good. The material looks as uniform at the edge as it does elsewhere in the bevel. which tells me that I do not have fatigued metal there. So this is the reason I'm mentioning that is that I'm this process that I'm showing is just the bare minimum, just for those who are starting out. And you can get, what I'm showing you is that you can get excellent results just using this simple approach. Okay, so here's the 12K. It's flattened, or flattened enough. And I'm going to raise a slurry. And I'm going to do the same stuff. Again, the purpose here, we have an apex that's been refined, probably not quite as far as the 8K would allow, but it's been refined on the 8K, close to as far as the 8K will allow. And now our goal is to do the same thing on the 12K. Refine the edge to reduce the dimension at the very apex. Add a little bit of water here. And so here we go, 12K, same procedure. Again, same pressure. There's no, in my view, there's no advantage to using a lot of pressure. And at this stage, I should slow down. At this stage, I'm going quickly because I'm talking. But at this stage, you really want, you want to go slowly. Your strokes should be slow, in my opinion. And you want to have pressure, enough pressure that you can start to feel through your fingers and hands. You want to feel what's happening as that edge is sliding over the stone, because these stones, the 8K and 12K, these stones are very smooth to the feel, and so you can feel what's happening at the edge. For instance, I feel a slight difference here than I do here. So I'm going to work on this just a little bit more with half strokes. And I'm doing the same procedure. I'm trying to put even pressure from heel to toe, keeping all of them on the stone, not doing that. This is the majority of the sharpening that I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm feeling the same thing on both sides. I can see from the way the swarf is moving that it's very, very similar on both sides. At this point, I'm letting the edge ride in the swarf. I'm not really driving the edge down. I'm doing this bead blasting thing. Now I'm going to do a little cleaning. And then this is going to be the first time that we really finish an apex. So I'm going to turn the stone so that I can start to wear on the other side. We're going to put a fair amount of water here, because now I'm going to let the surface abrasives on this stone operate on the edge with no slurry to bead blast that edge. So this is where I'm only abrading each bevel surface, and as I mentioned, no bead blasting going on. I'm just just letting each bevel surface be reduced by the abrasive in the stone. And I'm also moving slowly. And the reason I'm moving slowly has to do with impact. And I mean impact in the sense in which it's described in physics. Impact is the phenomenon of collision. And you're very familiar with this. Anytime you drive a nail, the hammer hitting the nail is impact. That's a collision. Now, something you should know if you've taken any physics is that the energy at impact is related to the velocity of the mass. So here you can see my velocity of the mass of this razor is slow. And the reason for that is the energy of collision between the razor and the particles on the surface. That energy is related to the velocity squared. So if I'm moving at, I don't know, 2 centimeters a second here, my energy would have, the velocity squared item would be 4. If I moved this at 3 centimeters a second, the velocity squared item would be 9. So I'm trying to make sure that the apex, which is now very, very thin, and which I do not want to pit, I want that apex to be as, again, consistent and uniform and worn down without having a collision force a pit in some area. Now, why am I worried about this? Well, the reason I'm worried about this is that the abrasive in these stones is of slightly different sizes and different shapes. And so it's very likely that at some point there's going to be an abrasive that sticks higher and is larger than the other abrasives that surround it. And so when I come in contact with that, I don't want that contact to cause a weakness in that area of the edge, which would in turn potentially cause the edge to chip there as you use it. So that's my goal there. Okay, so I think I've done way more passes than I need to. Let's make sure I do some cleaning. I'm doing more passes because I'm doing more talking. That was probably more than I need to. Let's test. And see where we are. Okay, so we're at the push into the cloud stage. I'm putting almost no effort into getting that edge to enter the packing peanut. Okay, and again, I haven't done any of my tricky business of stropping in between stones either. I'm doing this again in the most straightforward way I can for someone who is just starting out. All right, so I'm going to call that done. Now I'm going to strop. I'm going to do, you could do this with a hanging strop, but what I'm going to do is 25 laps on a fire hose linen strop, and then I'm going to do 50 laps on a steer hide leather bench strop, and then I will be back for a final test. Okay, I'm back. We did 30 laps on the fire hose linen, and then 60 laps on this steer hide leather bench strop. And now let's do the final test after stropping, which is pretty amazing. You know, literally just feels like pushing into a cloud. And, again, notice that I'm being consistent in my method for testing sharpness. Bring the blade to the packing peanut and push. All right, so that's excellent. I did take a microscope. I scanned the whole edge with the microscope. The whole edge is very, very consistent. So I took a single image of the center of this, and I'll be back to produce some dialogue over that image and tell you about the test shave. But before I leave here, I hope this has been helpful. I've definitely simplified what I normally do, try to present it to you in the form of a simple process. And please let me know if there's anything confusing, so effectively ask questions if you have them. Thank you if you've watched so far. Bye. All right, well, the test shave went very well. I had a very close, very comfortable shave, and really that's what you want. I mean, the edge performed really perfectly. So you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between this edge, this synthetic edge, and ones that I do where I do a lot of edge trailing gyrations and in strokes on the stones, and take it to nanocloth with smaller abrasives on them. And the answer is all that tinkering is really tinkering with the last 4 or 5% of the edge quality. 95% of the edge quality is there with what I showed you. I could easily use this edge to shave every day, and I am a daily shaver, so it's very important to me that the shave be comfortable and close. Otherwise, the lack of closeness will frustrate me, and the lack of comfort will result in irritation of the skin. So, bottom line is, it's a terrific edge, produced very simply, and you should expect the same results. And you probably won't have the same results in terms of the cleanness of the edge under such high magnification. I have received edges from people very experienced in honing razors, and their edges aren't necessarily as clean under the microscope at this level of magnification. And I got to tell you, it doesn't matter. Generally speaking, the uniformity of the edge from heel to toe and the sharpness, the keenness are what matters most. Slight variations in at the apex, slight amount of toothiness in the 1 to 4 micron range is least undetectable by me, and I suspect undetectable by others, because these are people who are very experienced at producing edges for other people. So one last thing I want to mention is that when you're looking at scratch pattern, you do want to see an evolution of the pattern from coarse to fine. If you look at the images that I took off of the 8K and the image that I took off of the 12K that I'm speaking over, you'll see that the pattern reflects the finer grained abrasive. And you do want to see that when you're doing it yourself. You want to see that progression in pattern. Other than that, thank you so much if you've followed yet another long video from me, and I again thank you for all of those kind comments that I've received. I'm frankly surprised, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.